Do you remember this card? Probably not, but it's a card in the game. My name is Person and I'm wearing a shirt with a duck on that. And today we will look at cards that you've probably forgotten about. Things that exist in the game that you will never see or encounter, so you kind of forgot about those cards. I made a list of multiple things that I put in there so we can look at them and then be like, oh yeah, that was in the game. Right? So the first card being Magnetor Alpha. It's not just that nobody ever played this card, it also has no synergy with anything. It doesn't have rush, it doesn't have charge, it has no ability, it just has the cleave ability, I guess, or the damage adjacent minions ability. There must be a keyword for that. If you were to ever summon that, what happens next? Your opponent's 1-drop destroys that and then you lose the game. But I thought about a 2-card combo, an insane combo to make this unbeatable. You need 7 mana, Magnetor Alpha and those 2 cards. And then you can deal 5 damage to 3 minions for just 7 mana. Wow, that's bad. Imagine we have Magnetor Beta as well as Magnetor Gamma. And then we also have like a polymerization spell. And then we toss that into Hearthstone. Then we summon the Curion the Magnet Warrior. Yeah, I mean, we could have had that. Maybe it's a new archetype in the next expansion. Probably not, because it won't be. Magnetor Alpha is just such a card that never saw play in any deck ever. And you probably have never heard the name before. And you didn't miss anything. Which makes this video actually clickbait so far. If I tell you that it's called Cards That You Forgot About, but you didn't even know this card existed, were you able to forget about something you didn't even know about? Think about it. And maybe you will find an answer, like Finders Keepers, where you have the White Rabbit. In like a couple of spells on Hearthstone, there's a White Rabbit in there, which should be a reference to Alice in Wonderland. Might be wrong, but that's like the only White Rabbit I've ever seen in any show ever. It has the effect Discover a card with Overload, Overload 1. So you spend 1 mana and 1 Overloaded Mana Crystal to get a card that has Overload and messes your next turn up even more. Surprise, surprise, this card sucks. The thing about Overload cards is I think every single card that has Overload is available for Shamans. There are a couple dual class cards that overload Druid, for example, like Lightning Bloom, or Totemic Summon 4 Treants, but every single Overload card is available for Shaman anyway, so why would you ever play Finders Keepers if you could just play the card instead you would like to have and save 2 mana? Questions you will never have an answer for, but at least it looks pretty and golden, so there we have that. Next we get Wii Spellstopper, a Mage minion 4 mana 2/5 from GVG. So this card is already over 6 years old. And it got reprinted and it got power creeped with Robes of Protection, which has the exact same effect, just affects your entire board. So I don't know if there's ever a deck where Wii Spellstopper made sense in, but for 4 mana you get a 3-drop at best and the effect is pretty bad. I guess the good thing is, if you ever want to purchase a GVG pack and you happen to get an epic, which is Wii Spellstopper, you just earned yourself 100 dust. Then we got Vryghoul. Him. So it's like an undead zombie monster from Knights of the Frozen Throne, so it's about 3.5 years old by now. Outside of Arena, was this card or any card in that style like that Paladin card ever useful in any deck? Since the release of Knights of the Frozen Throne, people have not seen those cards on ladder anywhere. I still get reminded that this card exists whenever my opponent casts Evolve or summons a random minion for me, and I happen to get that, but besides that, I think not a single person has ever played this card against me. The effect itself is not that bad, right? It's a 3 mana, 5/3, good stats for the cost over 2 bodies, but in reality, you summon a 1-drop, and then you have to trade with that because your opponent just ignores that, and then you lose. From an early expansion, one of the worst expansions ever made, the Grand Tournament, we get the Skeleton Knight. And you might know him in that artwork. First of all, it's a 6 mana 7/4. That's really bad stats for the cost. Reveal a card in each deck. If yours costs more, return this minion to your hand. So even if this card dies, you technically can get it back to your hand. And then you have to spend 7 mana again to summon the card. Needless to say, that card is really bad. It's just an aggressive static minion for way too much mana. Well, you probably forgot about this card. Maybe you remember that the Chinese artwork is different than the artwork for us in the Western world. I'm not sure how many cards this applies to, but the Skeleton Knight in the Chinese artwork is covered in armor because bones are against TOS. Maybe they're too scary, skeletons, something like that. And in case you didn't know that, fun fact, cards have alternate artwork even in Hearthstone. Staying in the same expansion as the Skeleton Knight, next we get Stable Master. This card technically is not that bad, right? If you think about this effect and the stats and the mana cost, it's kind of like Death Speaker, which we have seen recently with the Hysteria OTK. Well, Death Speaker is a 3 mana 2/4 that gives immune to a minion for a turn. Stable Master is a 3 mana 4/2, got the stats swapped around and gives immune to a beast. While this doesn't sound that bad, I also have never seen a single person playing this card against me. I just know that this card exists because I wanted to get every card in the game for my collection and I had to craft that. And I was like, oh, isn't that like Bestial Wrath, but as a minion? And then I felt great for investing my dust into that. But in all honesty, this card doesn't seem that bad. If you have a minion on the board already and you give it immune so you can trade for free, that might win you the early game. And yet, not a single person plays Stable Master. For Warrior, also in the same expansion I just noticed, there are a lot of cards in TGT that didn't see any play. This expansion was really bad. The next card is Reaver. It's a 6 mana 6/7. When you draw this card, when you top deck this card, it deals 1 damage to all minions that are on your side of the field. Not all minions like Flame Leviathan, just your own. So if you have something like an Acolyte of Pain, Armor Smith, or maybe Grim Patron, maybe there's synergy. In reality, you just never draw the card when you need that. So you have a 6 mana 6/7, which is Ogre stats for the cost. Everybody likes Ogres, but Reaver has an upside or a big downside. I feel like I want to make a deck with that card. Want to make it work somehow, because it doesn't seem that bad, but it only affects your own minions. Next we got Heihachi from Tekken, I mean Mini Mage. I always thought that's the exact same character. Mini Mage from GVG, a 4 mana 4/1, stealth and spell damage +1, minion. Boy, that's useless. Like if you think about it for like 3 seconds, why would you play that minion? To deal 4 damage because it's stealth, or to get spell damage? I don't really think there's any combination of the two. Or did you ever feel like, hey, I need spell damage next turn, and I also want to deal 4 damage after. Let's play Mini Mage. Probably not. Him also just having 1 single point of health makes him die almost immediately. And even though he's a little bit different than Patient Assassin, they were always kind of connected in my head at least. Because they were both useless. Having minions with a good effect like spell damage or poisonous on them, but also having 1 HP means they just die to absolutely everything. At least you can play them in any class, so maybe you want to play Warrior with Mini Mage and Reaver, and then have a combo. Now we go to Light Sorrow, a weapon from the Knights of the Frozen Throne. The idea of this is to push Divine Shield Paladin, which if you think back for the past 3.5 years, was never an archetype or a deck. Divine Shield Paladin doesn't exist. Maybe it does exist if you play Battlegrounds and you get Bolvar, and the mech and you gain Divine Shield again, but playing that is just not good. You pay 4 mana for a 1/4 weapon, which is literally worth less than 1 mana. Think about it, if you play Muster for Battle in Paladin, you get a 1/4 weapon and you summon 3 dudes. This weapon gains +1 attack whenever a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, which happens a lot, right? You could play Shielded Minibot, or that's kind of it. You can play Shielded Minibot and it loses Divine Shield. Maybe Ziliax. This compared to like every single weapon in Rogue is just laughable. But at least it looks cool, and you will never see it because it's bad. And while there are bad weapons, you can also have a bad outcome when it comes to RNG. Whenever your opponent casts Evolve or Evolve, you never want to have a 1/1 minion, right? You always want to have a better stated minion or at least a good death rattle or effect on the board. Thing is though, for certain mana costs, there are always 1/1s. For example, for 8 mana there's Harik, at 7 mana Lunessa, and at 5 mana there's Furbolg Mossbinder. I think the only time I've ever seen this card outside of my opponent casting Evolve is when I used Evolve Shaman like 3-4 years ago. It transforms a friendly minion into a 6/6 elemental. Technically, you can trade with your 4-drop and then make it a 6/6, and you have a 1/1. And evolve that or whatever. In any case, that doesn't happen though, because people don't play this. When I check the stats on how often cards are played, so I can consider them for this video, all of those cards had a 0% play rate over the past month. So it's safe to say, you probably don't play this card. The second spell in this list is Demonfuse, also from TGT. There are so many bad cards in TGT. However, it's a buff spell that buffs a demon by +3/+3 for 2 mana. That's not too bad. And your opponent gets a mana crystal. Well, fun fact, every single card out there that gives your opponent a mana crystal or destroys your own mana is bad. Unless it's like turn 10 and you don't care. Like if you compare this card to the 2 mana 2/2 in Classic, that has kind of the exact same effect, but it's more versatile because it can also deal damage to an enemy minion. Then you're just like, wow. I gain +1/+1 in stats and my opponent gets +1 mana every turn now. Every single turn. The reason why Wild Growth was nerfed, and why cards like Lightning Bloom, Innovate, and Overgrowth are really good, is because you get extra mana. If you play Demonfuse, you give that to the opponent for free. Fun fact you didn't care about, I have that in Golden, and I won't disenchant that. And for the last card or two, we have Curio Collector. A 5 mana 4/4 mage minion. Whenever you draw a card, gain +1/+1. Technically, you can somehow make that an OTK, but that's really complicated and I won't even explain how to do it. So we just go with, this card doesn't see play, it's bad. But you might have seen that before, because there's a similar card but for the opponent called Daring Reporter. Whenever your opponent draws a card, gain +1/+1. So while those two cards are kind of the same thing just for you or the opponent, while they are useless. Like when you play Curio Collector, your effect is you summon a 5-mana 4/4 without effect. That's the effect. When you play Daring Reporter, at least the effect is you summon a 4-mana 4/4 without effect, because the opponent draws a card when their turn starts and then your minion dies. I don't know if they try to make Draw Mage an actual archetype at some point, but if we had that, maybe Mill Rogue is not the most annoying deck to play against, it would be Mill Mage instead. Ah, Curio. You might be Curio, but I'm curious. Did you notice that my fort is less reflective? In all those last videos, or in most videos, my fort was really reflective, right? That spot right there. This time, it's different. I learned how to set up light even better. And I use daylight. And I'm not wearing a black t-shirt. So many things are different. But there's one thing that stays the same. And that is saying thank you for your time, thank you for watching, and which card do you think was the most useless one they ever printed that everybody forgot about? My name is Solem. You can like and sub, that's always an option, and it's free. Helps out the channel a lot. And take care.